Welcome to another edition of SaaS on the Street. Welcome, Trevor Newberry.
Thanks for having me.
So anyone who's joining, this is the session. If you are contemplating any kind of new SaaS product, any kind of new software as a service product, could be to complement what you've got as an existing product, or it could be if you just like the idea of selling software licenses and generating wealth the old Bill Gates way with Windows 95. So I'm really privileged to have Trevor join us from Alabama.
Yep.
And it's just fantastic to have you on the show, Trevor, because I know we're going to cover so much valuable so much valuable area. Particularly, I'm interested in the people that see SaaS as, something they're interested in, excited by. Maybe they've dabbled, or maybe they haven't dabbled and they want to dabble, but they're just in that stage of wanting to get going. And one of the things that I've seen in the past is people say, "Hey, Simon, I'm working on this new SaaS product. It's going to be really good, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and okay, so tell me about it." And then they tell me about it, and something is kind of off. Like, I'm just sort of thinking, well, they're going down a particular road, and wow, I would not go down that road that they're going down, and that looks really hard. And part of the enthusiasm is based on the fact that they haven't really, they can't kind of see the obstacles ahead of them. And I can kind of see a lot of obstacles, and they've never been in the space at all. Yeah. So I thought one of the things that's really worthwhile talking about is if you're going to build a SaaS product, how valuable do you think it is to start working inside a SaaS company in some form or another, so you at least get a feel for the territory if you're completely new to it?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, this might not be a terribly satisfactory answer, but I think it cuts both ways. I actually entered technology with no experience in technology. So working with software products and some SaaS products, it was something that I committed that I wanted to do. I wanted to learn how to do it. And so, but that being said, I think that I kind of pick this apart a little bit. You can go work for a company. You can go work for a company that's building and deploying SaaS products. But what I did was I went in and I started doing contract work for people, right? So my learning experience was charging super low rates and having sort of one-off projects where I could kind of dip my feet in here, learn something, kind of pull back, did some iffy work at first. But I was able to build those skills over time doing it that way. And now, my rates have gone up and client list has gone up. But absolutely, one of the mantras that I tell people when they're asking about making a career change or specifically getting into technology and building software products is that there is no substitute for doing the work in terms of learning it, right? So I think joining a company is a great avenue to do it, but there are other ways to, as they say, skin that cat, right? You can do some contract work. You can look for internships. You can do a number of different things, but doing the work is the best teacher.
Yeah. So give us a quick summary of what you provide people to help them on this SaaS journey.
Yeah, sure. So my specialty is in really early stage concepts. That's where I live. Most of the work that I am doing is working with, you just described my typical client. I've got this amazing idea. I'm super jazzed about it. I probably have never done this before. I've never built a product before, much less a SaaS product. Hey, Trevor, what do you think about this? And of course, my experience at this stage does the same thing that yours did, where I go, you might want to take a slow this down a little bit, right? Let's not start writing checks to development shops quite yet. So what I do is work with people at 3 stages. So the very earliest concept stage is where I go through and do concept validation work. So this is me just going and teaching people how to do customer problem interviews, what we call a problem we're solving, identifying that problem we're solving in the space, or saying, hey, there really isn't a problem we're solving from the direction that you're approaching it from. And the second phase is once, if we validated the concept and we start to build a product, say we start to build an MVP, I come on as sort of a contract product manager. So I'm interfacing with marketing and finance and development and building out that structure so they have something that they can actually launch into the world with a little bit of structure behind it. And then the third phase is in that growth phase. And that's where we're really ramping that up now. We're looking at user acquisition, but it's still a user-centric piece of work. We're still not at that stage after, that launch and slightly post-launch. We're still not talking about massive scale. We're talking about validated learning, right? We're talking about bringing people in, and we may be charging less than we ultimately want to charge for the product. But what we're really trying to do is acquire users and get a lot of feedback to help us refine that product to the point where we can scale that revenue model up to the point where we want it to be. So those are the 3 buckets that I work in.
Fantastic. So, why do people want to build software, and why do you like software as a service?
I'll tell you what really gets me excited about software is that it's wide open. When you talk about building a house, there's so many ways you can build a house. If you want to start a company that makes sneakers, there's only so many ways that you can build a sneaker, right? When we start talking about software, and specifically software as a service, as sort of that market entry and revenue model, it's wide open. It's a creative's just paradise, to be honest with you. Once we get in there, we start ideating not just the problem, but all the solutions around the problem. It's just a really exciting process for me. I find it is super, super engaging, both intellectually and professionally. And as for why people want to build software, I mean, software is eating the world, right? What is that? Mark Andreessen talks about that. It's everywhere. I've got, the latest iPhone. So I'm sitting here looking at it, and I'm constantly getting people say, hey, have you checked this app out? Have you checked this app out? Have you checked? It's in the zeitgeist, and it's in the front of people's minds. So their natural tendency for a lot of people when they have an idea is they say, I would really be interested in building a mobile app for that, or, a web app for something to solve this problem that I've identified. And a lot of times that's not necessarily the right path for them to go down, but I understand why people want to do it. It's exciting, right? Now there's a negative side to that as well. A lot of people look at software as sort of a silver bullet, right? You build it and then you just start selling it, right? And that's the wrong way to approach it. As well as I do that there's constant maintenance. There's just a litany of things that need to be done to maintain a software product, just like a physical product, but they're just different, right? So usually I run into that where people are like, wow, bada bing, bada boom, we're going to get this into the market and we're going to make $1 million. And it's like, well, you're probably not, but we can lay the foundation of that together. But if you're going into it thinking this is going to be an ATM printing money for you, you should take a step back, right? So I hope that answers your question.
How many different ways can you say it's probably not going to make $1 million?
Yeah. I usually just go straight with it's not going to make $1 million. Yeah, that's usually what I rely on. Yeah.
You go for the jugular.
I go straight for the jugular. I have learned that, splitting hairs is not
there must be plenty of multi-billion-dollar ideas that you get as well.
I get so many of them. I get lots of people very excited about how rich they're going to be when they finish building their product. And it's always, the reason I go straight for the jugular is because I've learned that splitting hairs really does nobody any service. I usually, if I'm going to be able to work with them productively, I have to get in there and just say, stop it.
The boil.
Yep, exactly.
Hot needle.
It's kind of a gross visual, but yes. Yeah.
What if they don't actually say it's going to make $1 billion, but that they're thinking it? How do you deal with that?
I can work with that, right? So, and what I look for most of the time is whether or not people are listening. So if they're taking what I'm trying to teach and trying to advise, and are they actually processing that and doing something with that information, or are they just saying, yeah, but that's usually an indication that we're on the wrong path.
But the qualification process, how much of that is, so let's say I come to you with a shit idea, but you
Yeah.
quite like me. You quite like me, and
Yeah.
I'm quite happy to keep funding the relationship,
Sure.
putting money in the meter. So, do you take that as, well, it's a long journey, and possibly Simon's going to come up with something half decent, whereas Frank's off to lunch, got a great idea, but he's never going to do it because he's an asshole, or he's not really thinking straight. He's not listening. He's not listening. So
I that's a great question.
How do you qualify the people coming through? Have you matured that?
Yeah. So I actually described the 3 buckets. And so what we do here, I'm looking at, I'm alone here. I don't know. Maybe you are alone here. No, what I do is I walk them through those buckets in a very intentional way. So my first thing that I try to do with people is validate their concept, right? And if we don't get the validation that I know that they need in order to justify moving forward, then I have a polite conversation about, I think we need to go back to the drawing board. Now, I will continue to go back to the drawing board with your shit idea and try to build it into a concept that has some legs. But there is a point 2 or 3 times, I think maybe it's time to go another way. But I don't, so there's sort of gating thresholds, right? So, when I talk about validation, what I'm really referencing is we're going to go through the process of building a lean canvas or a business model canvas, right? We're going to put together problem interviews with prospective customers. We're going to build user personas, right? We're going to start talking to people and finding out whether or not this is something that anybody cares about, right? That's the thing that we're going to start with. And then we might even go so far, if we get a little bit of positive feedback, we might even go so far as to say, what we really need to start doing now is building a prototype, something we can throw away, right? It's a fake version of the product, but maybe we can put this in front of people, right? We've got some positive feedback. Doesn't take a whole lot of time or money to put together a prototype. We can do that. And that is usually the final validating step. Like, that's usually the final point where we can all sit down around a table or, on Zoom and COVID times and say, does this make sense to move forward or does it not? So,
right. Yeah. Fantastic. So that's the staged process. And is everybody, do you have people funding and saying, can you take our money and work with these people?
I'm sorry, say that one more time. I lost you for a second there.
Do you have funding do you have situations where, an organization will say, I want you to work with, 3 people every quarter, and they'll fund their places, and you do?
Kind of like that,
Not really.
but not. No, actually, the closest that kind of relationship that I have is with development shops. So dev shops will oftentimes get these concepts. They go straight to them. So that's frankly, that's one of the sales hiccups that I have to deal with all the time is someone has an idea, they go straight to the dev shop. So my job is to make sure that the dev shop knows that I exist and what I do, so they can look at these concepts and say, pump the brakes. We got somebody we want you to talk to. Yeah. So kind of like that, but not exactly like that.
Great. So Amal, just ask any question you like. The subject is early stage SaaS.
Yeah.
What do you think of this idea of like product market fit, validate, scale?
Yeah. Well, so product market fit, validate, scale. The order there, I would maybe rearrange, right? So we validate, then product market fit, then scale. That's sorry. Does that make sense?
I mean product market fit. Validate, product market fit, MVP, scale.
Yeah. So, we've talked a lot about validation and what we need to do for validation, right? For these kind of gating thresholds. Now, when we get to product market fit, typically with my clients, I like to have an MVP in the field at that stage. That's where we're starting to figure out product market fit. Now, when I say that, MVP, I've rarely encountered a more misunderstood and misused term than the MVP. Like Eric Ries has got be just losing it every time he reads a Medium article about the MVP. This may well be something where we're delivering it manually, what we call a concierge MVP, right? Where we're going out and there's no software involved. We're charging for it, but we're just doing it manually. And that's one really, I mean, that's where we start to find that product market fit, right? So we're still low stakes. We're still not building any actual software. We're instead, what we're doing is going out and saying, kind of actually Stitch Fix is a great example. Are you familiar with Stitch Fix? Stitch Fix is an online, it's a mobile app, a web app that you go on, you create a profile, you enter like your style preferences, they send you clothes, you keep what you like, pay for those, and then send the rest back. And the founder, when she was getting started, she went out and would talk to her friends and say, I want to be your personal shopper. And she would ask them a bunch of questions and go out and buy clothes on her credit card, take them to her friends. Her friends would try them on, keep what they wanted, pay her for that. And she would take what wasn't kept and return them to the store. So she was doing Stitch Fix, but she was doing it manually. And that allowed her to validate her concept. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There you go. Absolutely. You got it. Yeah. So, and so when we talk about the product market fit stage, the MVP
Zappos for clothes, right?
Zappos for clothes. Yep. When we talk about the product market fit,
only Zappos had thought of that.
Say what?
If only Zappos had thought of that.
They probably kick themselves for that.
They stopped at shoes. Oh well.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, no, that's I think that's, when we talk about those stages with that MVP, that doesn't have to look like a fully custom built MVP. It can look like doing something manually, and that allows you to find that product market fit. That allows you to tailor rapid fire. Like you can make changes to the model, to the delivery model really, really quickly because you're getting immediate feedback from your clients, right? So that's where we do that. And once we have what we feel like is product market fit, that's when we're going to start to go and develop some software. If we haven't already built some software, and then we're going to get to the scale part. But I hope that was kind of a long-winded way to go about that.
I saw this brilliant new product that a company called Aria that I was involved in has released called Ping. And I was up in Auckland recently, and they showed me the behind the scenes of the demo that I'd seen on screen.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually built this thing in PowerPoint as a sort of a demonstrator. And it looked, I mean, the screen, it was so layered and complex that it completely fooled me. And I said, well, how did you do the little, like the finger moving between the thing? Oh, I just did this animation across here in PowerPoint and then went over there and then this kicks in. I was like, wow. I mean, they had to put it together really quickly for a presentation, but it was so incredible to me that you could create almost like an app experience and something as basic as PowerPoint.
It's really interesting. So there are several tools like that, and that's where what we call the prototype. So I try to make really, really clear distinctions between a prototype and an MVP. And the distinction that I use is value. A prototype does not provide value. It's fake. It's all smoke and mirrors, but it allows you to kind of get a feel for how you're going to interact with a product. An MVP provides value. So you're trading money or something of value, right? So there are several.
It's not most valued player. We're talking about the minimum viable product.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, exactly. So when we talk about that, like the PowerPoint thing, that's a brilliant move. It's a great way to put a prototype in front of somebody and let them get a sense of like how this looks, how this feels, how I might navigate this product. There are other software products out there. Adobe XD is the one that comes immediately to mind, where you can build app experiences, you can build web experiences. They're clickable, they link between screens. It's really impressive. But it's not an actual product, right? So it's a great prototyping tool, but not an actual product. I think it's brilliant. I love it. And I can't, if you've got the time or the resources at your disposal to sit down and put people into, an Adobe XD or Figma or PowerPoint and build that, there are very few better prototypes to put together, especially for an investor or for testing with early customers. Yeah.
And what do you like to use for actual MVP material?
So we work with 3 different MVPs. The first one is a concierge, which I've already described. You're delivering manually, right? So, and in that stage, I mean, that's like email and phone calls. Like this is extremely manual, right? This
Yeah.
is not. There's nothing really high tech about this. The second one is what we call a Wizard of Oz MVP. So there's a really the best way to understand that is you're actually using some off the shelf products, right? With a concierge MVP, you're not trying to hide the human interaction. The human interaction is front and center. With a Wizard of
Right.
Oz MVP, you're trying to hide the man behind the curtain kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then a very similarly related MVP is what we call a piecemeal MVP. And so that's very similar, but we're stringing together things like maybe through Zapier, some sort of automation process where we can string together off the shelf products. And in a lot of cases, you can not only use that kind of MVP to test, but you can also use that kind of MVP to do your early sales. A lot of those products can actually support a small number of users in a coherent way. But all of these are sort of like, it's kind of taking the big monolith of the MVP and breaking it into chunks, like kind of stages that you ramp up to, right? We're
Right.
still like the whole goal here is to sort of pump the brakes as much as possible before we get to writing lines of code, because that's
Yeah.
such an expensive, such a resource intensive process that when we get to that point, I want to have eliminated as many of the unknowns as possible before I pull the trigger on that. Right now, there's a limit to how many you can do, but as many as possible. Go ahead.
So, like, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I just like the way you go ahead.
Yeah. All right. So you wanted to talk.
That's not something a Kiwi person would say.
Okay.
Go
Well,
ahead.
you're talking to a Southerner now. Yeah, you go ahead. How about it?
Now I've lost what I was going to say. It's something about there's something about your oh gosh, what were you just talking about?
My Southern hospitality tripped you up. I'm sorry. Yeah. No, we were talking about eliminating unknowns. Yeah, using these staged MVPs to eliminate unknowns.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the areas. Yeah, this is what it was. So, in my world, I see the whole kind of creating a SaaS solution for consumers
Mm-hmm.
and creating a SaaS solution for businesses. There's 2 very distinct fields there. And I guess when we're talking about, because also the lines are starting to get a wee bit blurred, right?
Yeah.
Because business users are using consumer products. Like,
Yep.
Where do some of the social media platforms fall into business and consumer? It's just blended.
Yep.
Even at a user level, not just an advertising level. So then on the business side, I guess my thesis that I've been evolving is that you either go for the enterprise end of the market, which is the biggest companies in the world, or you go to the small, medium-size end of the market. And one of the analogies I have for this is a guy called Dove Simons, who was a Hollywood producer and used to teach these crazy one-day how to break into Hollywood classes.
Yeah.
And he's like, this was back in the 90s or the 2000s, and he'd say, nobody wants to go see a $200,000 movie. People won't go see back in those days like a $200 million movie. Everybody wants to see what $200 million looks like on the screen. And people want to see what $5,000 looks like on the screen. It's like you go budget, and that's part of the story that I made this for $5,000.
Yep.
Or you're at the top end and you just get lost in the middle. And I feel the guidance that I give people a lot is you've got to be at the premium end or at the kind of, this is an essential kind of small business tool. Now, there are verticals, like I'm working with the guys, does a lot with, say, orchards and growers, but he's actually got to choose, is he the premium product for orchards around the world and working with the corporates, or is he going to be like at the grower level where it's like the mom and pop growers of the world, and they're the decisions that I think people have to make, because too often they're not actively making them because they're not able to see the premium end of the market. It's not visible to them. I just have to say, look, it exists. It's not that. I mean, there's someone I know who I had a workshop with last year. This year, the United Nations called. I'm like, you talk about a whale of a client. That's a whole ocean. That's not a whale. That's an ocean. Like, how many users? We looked at it as like I can't remember how many.
A lot.
Over 150,000 users, whatever. So how does that play in your world, and the kinds of the kinds of steers that you're giving people to where they could be serving that they may not be aware of? Because I'm really curious to see, am I missing chunks in the middle of the market that I should be steering people towards, or in the consumer area? What's your experience?
Yeah, so we always pretty much exclusively start small. We're almost always starting with that, $5,000 movie, if you will. And again, the folks that I'm working with are first timers in a lot of cases. So, like what you described as somebody hitting these whale clients, you've got to have resources behind you, right? You've really got to be able to build a pretty impressive product to go to those premium, enterprise level companies. They'll eat you alive, right? If you have no experience in that, the sales process is very complicated. It's complex. So what I usually coach people to do is to start small, right? Start with your $5,000 client, and then move into that premium space, because what you also need to be able to do, and again, it's very, very dependent on the client. You've also got to be able to see the problem in that space. And if you haven't played at that level, you can't see the problems. It's not just an unawareness of the existence of those clients. It's, how do you even know how to solve the problems that aren't being solved for them if you've never played in that space before, right? So I usually, with my people that I'm working with, it's a mistake to try and target the enterprise level, right? That's usually a recipe for disaster, unless, again, I get somebody that comes to me and is like, well, I've been working for Fortune 500X for the last 20 years, and I have a lot of domain experience, and I know exactly what they need and how to build it. So that's a different story. I don't have any of those clients. So there's that.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, isn't it? That if you've got this is what I see with people who are early stage, is that sometimes I'm really aware that they have this gift, and the gift they have is that they can see the problem.
Yeah.
And that very few people can see the problem that they can see because of their particular life journey and their particular lens. And then I think the next step is I get quite excited about that. I go, wow, this thing that they can see, that like they're ahead by a month, 6 months, a year, 2 years. And then it comes back to, well, hang on, what if, because we all know situations where people are ahead and there is no market. They're just, the market doesn't follow them. They don't catch up.
Right? Yeah.
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 Did you say the segue?
Yeah, the segue was good. It was going to change transportation. It was going to revolutionize our lives. And now it's, tour guides and funny videos of people crashing. Like, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No good on the street, no good on the footpath.
Yep.
Yeah. But around a parking lot.
It's a hell of a lot of fun around a parking lot. Yeah. We're good there. Yeah. No, I think, well, sorry, finish your thought there.
No, that was it. I wanted to share that with you, that I see that gift, and they're actually not aware at that point of kind of what they've got their hands on. But then we're both in the situation of going, well, is the market going to actually want this? And this is where you come in to say, let's do the interviews. Let's figure out the research. Let's put something in front of them. Let's see whether this thing is going to fly, and how many times is the one thing that you come up with, how many times is that? It's like the first draft of a script.
Yeah.
Is there ever gonna, is it? Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, what you're describing is something that I run into all the time. And, the dirty little secret about the work that I do and all product people do is that, frankly, this doing the validation steps for your idea it's not hard. It's not technically difficult, but it is counterintuitive. It's hard to convince people that this is a good use of their time and their resources. Conducting problem interviews is a skill that can be learned, right? Conducting good interviews, asking good questions is a skill that can be learned. But most people are not they're not excited about taking something that they're feeling really passionate about and then subjecting it to a process of getting the hell beat out of it, right? Like most people aren't okay with that. And that's what makes the work that, folks like yourself and myself do so valuable is when we can get somebody that has a really good idea that can see that problem. We can guide them through that process. We can show them how it's okay to subject your everybody thinks their baby's the prettiest, right? It's okay to receive some criticism about this idea because it's going to help you build a better product. It's going to help you build a product, not that's better, but that actually sells, that someone will pay for in the first place. And that's where, this problem we're solving concept comes in is, like the Segway example, like, it's like, this is going to change people's lives. And yeah, but no one cared. Like no one cared about that at all. It's a novelty item, right? And if people don't care about the thing that you're passionate about, if they can't see the same problem that you can see, they're not going to buy it. Like just plain and simple, right? I mean, marketing can only fix so much of that.
It's amazing, isn't it? A novelty item is like the kiss of death sentence for a SaaS product.
That is not what you want.
Wow.
Yeah. That is not what you want at all.
So now I'll start listening through. Is this a novelty item?
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. I just came up with that on the spot. I got to remember that one too.
Yeah. Noveltyitemsas.com.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's live. It's live. It's gone.
Somebody's already bought that.
I don't think I'm mouse Googling it. Yeah, so a friend of mine came up to me recently and he said, I've got this brilliant idea. Oh, no, I've got an idea. And he's a retiree.
Yeah.
But a very, very young retiree. And he's kind of
good for him
wanting to emerge out of retirement and do this SaaS product. And, it's clever. And then I did a quick interview with a potential customer who's also very savvy, and he's just like, oh, why would I buy that? Because I didn't even tell him what this whole thing was, but but I can get all this other stuff for free, and I was just like, oh damn, I thought he'd be really keen, a great customer potentially. And free is a weapon and it's a curse, and if you get it wrong, it's so hard to get. It's like free is undervalued. Like free, if I get something, I sign up for something that's free, and then I'm on the list, and I'm like, oh, get me off this list, because I didn't really think about it. I just thought it's free, I'll grab it. And now I'm on this list, and I'm like, and then there's also that pain of it's free. Oh, now we'd like you to pay. What?
It's hard to turn that.
Yeah.
I don't,
how do you deal with the free thing?
I think free can be a great tool, right? In the right circumstances. And what I mean there is if you're giving your product away for free, especially early on, and you're doing that just to get users, think about where that points your business model down the line, right? Think about what that's boxing you into, right? So my favorite free products are, so there's an app that I just started using for note-taking and sort of personal knowledge called Craft. You can go to craft.do, I think is the website. And it is kind of in the vein of like Notion and Rome Research, but it's a little bit lighter. It's not as much energy to get started. And it starts free, and it's free forever. And it's actually pretty robust as a free product. But the features, so what they're saying with their free product is, this is essentially a supercharged note-taking app, right? We don't need to charge you for that. But the things that we do charge you for are the features inside of it that really like open this up for like intense team collaboration, for personal knowledge management, for stringing ideas together across different documents and different concepts. Those are really valuable. So what they've done, they get people in, and it's not just a carrot and a stick, right? It is saying, we have a valuable product. If I just continued to use Craft for free, I would probably be happy with it. But I started paying because when I saw the opportunity to start literally in a Zettelkasten kind of way, stringing my notes together and sharing them with clients and edit and, deeply embedding things into it, like from deep links from like my my email provider, it just became super, super powerful. So what they didn't just go for users. There you go. You've got it. They didn't just go for users. They're providing discrete standalone units of value at every step of the way, right? They weren't just trying to boost how many people they had on their platform. They're saying like, look, this free version is going to be free forever. It is what it is. And it's very useful and it's very valuable. We also have these other things, right? So you can get them in and using your product, but you need the bait and switch of like, now you got to pay. That model sucks. The model very rarely works. People are smarter now. They kind of figured that out early on, right? This model works because I don't feel pressured to pay unless I want to use those features, right? But I've got a valuable product at the early stage.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like MailChimp, to send to send mailing campaigns out, you're starting to pay some sort of meter thing. But I use the HTML editor, and then I take it out and I send everything through my sales and marketing CRM called SalesSeek.
Yeah.
And SalesSeek is free, and MailChimp thinks I'm not sending anything, so I get it for free. And I'm happy to pay for MailChimp. It's just like I'm outside their box of who they're charging for.
Yep.
They're not valuing the HTML editor. They're like, if you build an email campaign with an HTML editor in MailChimp, you'll want to send it out of MailChimp. Well, I don't.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a weird thing sometimes when you get stuff for free that you think you should be paying for. But I remember a good friend of mine was the account manager with me at Diligent, then became the product manager at Aria, named called Mario Figuered, and I recommended some site to him or something, and I was using the free version, and he's sitting across the desk from me. And I was like, so did you try that out? He's like, oh, yeah, I bought it. I was like, no, you don't need it. You don't need to buy it. You just use the free one. I was like, Mario, you're so stupid. And Mario's like, no, Simon, you're so stupid because the free one's going to suck a bit, and they might as well just go straight to the bought one.
Yep.
It was the first person in my life back in 2009 who was like, you just pay for it because the free thing is only going to get you so far. So if it looks half decent, why not get it over and done with? Just put the card in, and like he just has a budget for software in his mind. I now subscribe and buy stuff that
we have a household and a business budget for that very thing. Yep.
Yeah. And it's just a great mindset to get into. It's kind of, I guess, it's a little bit luxurious but it's getting away from this idea that I just want to use the free version of everything.
Yeah. And, I think that it's difficult. I could kind of feel myself while I was talking about that, struggling to string it together, because I think the distinctions are small, but they're very important. Something like Craft as an example, so actually I want to use your MailChimp example. MailChimp has yet to quite settle on what brings value to their customers, right? So an HTML editor is not, I use SparkMail, right? It's a free product for my email, and it has an HTML editor in it. If I want to do that, I can do that, right? That's not that hard. Right. So where MailChimp is going, and if you've you're taking a look at it anytime recently, they're getting into business automation, sales automation, funnel building. They're starting to build features and products.
Okay.
Yeah. That are, because I think they're realizing like people are doing what you're doing. They're just not finding this as, I mean, obviously they've been very successful, but they can see the limitations on the product, on their core product that they've built to date. Where something like Craft is, what makes that different, or I guess maybe a different take on that same concept, is that it's providing good value at every level, free or paid, right? So they're not giving you, like a crappy product and then asking you like, well, if you don't want this to suck, then pay up. They're saying, here's a valuable product. There's some limitations to it, but if your needs are not that robust, then this will be fine for you. By the way, now that you're using it, if you want to take advantage of these features, we can do that too. And it's relatively inexpensive. It's like $4.99 a month. But I think it's an important, but it's kind of a dicey distinction. It can kind of cut both ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
So anyway, sorry.
So, what else do you want to talk about before the time's up? Because we could go down a number of different paths here.
Yeah, I want to actually hear you talk. I want to hear you talk a little bit about your experience in the SaaS world, and it sounds like you've done some work with larger companies, and I want to see if we can kind of dovetail some of the work that I'm doing into that as well. So, specifically, SaaS is a.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead. SaaS is a word and a phrase that people hear all the time, and they have a hard time understanding it. So I know I'm flipping the script now, but I want to hear, how you describe SaaS to people that are new to the concept.
It's software that you rent monthly, and that lives in the cloud.
Got it. It's perfect. Yep.
Like Spotify. That's pretty much I was at a funeral yesterday for a dear friend or service celebration. She died during COVID, but not of COVID. And yeah, that's the thing that everybody kind of understands, when they don't understand anything about what you do. I just described that.
Yeah. I think that's a good description. A lot of the customers that I have worked with and clients that I've worked with struggle to make that distinction, honestly. So it's something that's pretty common. So, like I said, we start with the problem and we sort of work backwards into the framework and the delivery, right? Sort of the business model and the delivery of that. When people start out in the work that I do, when people start out with an idea, hey, I'm going to build a SaaS product.
Right.
Well, for that to work, you need to know what you're talking about. You need to know that this is going to be a good fit for SaaS or it's not. Yeah. So we start with the problem and we work backwards to what's the best business model for this problem. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Because either it fits or it doesn't fit. And if it doesn't fit, you know that you're backing up the wrong tree. And if it does fit, well, hallelujah.
Well, and there's so many different ways to charge for software too. I mean, there's 100 different ways you can slice it. And I think that's something that's really exciting to me is you don't have to box yourself in. It's not required to box yourself in like that, right? You can, and if you start with the problem and back your way into what's the best business model, that leaves the options and the avenues open. But if you start with the business model, SaaS, and then try to retrofit everything else into it, you run into problems. You start to get kind of Frankenstein projects where you're, tacking things on or taking things away just to kind of make it fit that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I want to ask you about websites. The front door of a SaaS proposition. But what question did you have about the kind of the premium end of the enterprise end of things?
Yeah, one thing that I think is really valuable for people to hear and understand, which I honestly, I can't bring this to the table, is how the sales process differs. How you need to position, like messaging, positioning, how you need to be prepared to sell for that enterprise level client. And that's not something that I bring to the table for most of my clients. So I think I'm going to share this with my clients when this is recorded. So it'd be good for them to hear that too.
Okay, well, I'll get something for them up. So I think the key thing is that you've just got to get into training on it and get expert advice, because it saves just so much time.
Yeah.
Literally years of business development, we can fast forward it in like 4 mornings.
Wow.
And you suddenly go, so that's the game I should be playing. That's how I should be talking about it. That's how I should be engaging with people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the secret. So I was just looking for some of my materials here, but I've got all these screens that I'm driving StreamYard from. Hang on, let me have a look here. Yeah, so I just basically, you said we do the same thing. I'm more at the enterprise sales and also capital raising end of things, because I just find that it's what I've done. It's what I love.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll just show you this. 1 second. Just try and do the share thing. Remove.
Come on, StreamYard.
Stop screen. Come on, StreamYard. Application. There we go. Okay, let's try this. Share.
There it is.
There it is. Okay, so basically, it's what I offer is called SaaS Elevator, and I'll just take you through. Can't do that in StreamYard. So it's just lifting the lid on your SaaS business and its potential. So this is sell more SaaS. So it's all about. I mean, my real specialty is in this selling to the biggest companies in the world, but you apply the same principles to all sorts of things. And then mega SaaS deals, which is like really scaling it up, like doing either multi-million-dollar deals, which I've done, or doing deals at scale where the business just goes like a juggernaut.
Yeah.
And it's firing. And then, so they're in the kind of the sales end of things. And then in the raising capital, this is about really being the global category leader in your business. So this is iGlobalize. These are all 4 mornings online.
Okay. Yeah.
And then this is about how to raise capital, the different ways of raising capital.
Got it.
So they're the ones that I focus on. I kind of talk about the 1%, meaning like the way that the top 1% of SaaS companies sell, and the way the top 1% raise capital. They're the 2 things that I help people with. So I don't really deal in the stuff we're talking about. I try and leave that to experts like yourself, and I just try and trade on the things that I've done, because I haven't actually started anything from scratch. So I can't really, just.
It's a wild ride, man. You should do it one day, just for practice. It's and that's interesting to hear and to see that, and I think that's made this conversation particularly interesting, because I get super excited about these early stage concepts. Like I early on in my career, I was able to be exposed to small businesses, local businesses, help them run, help them grow. But these were like physical products, restaurants, shops, soft goods, things like that. And I saw the impact that these ideas can make on communities, and technology just scales that out globally. So when someone comes to me with a big idea, it's like, I really want to help you have the best shot at building something that you can actually grow into, because the success rate is in the single digits for things like this. So, any help is good help. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you, in your mind, do you think I'm going to potentially, do you have these things come across your desk where someone's like, Trevor, come and join me, and you're actually really tempted?
Oh yeah.
Do you have a bit of a struggle, and you're kind of like wondering if this might be some,
this might be the thing. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And that's something that is a relatively recent phenomenon in the last year or so, which is, I think,
right.
Not to, well, it's flattering, and it's really humbling that people think of me that way. So it definitely has come across, that's come across my desk a few times. And, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't looking at a couple of them currently.
Yeah.
So that's something that, I'm definitely interested in. But that's a really good segue to, so my company for the last 4 coming up on 5 years has been Newberry Consulting, and that's me.
Yeah.
AppThink is a new product, a new service that I'm putting together with the director of product management of a company here in Birmingham. It's a good friend of mine, and it's really, really early. It's a Squarespace website with some links that I'm sure don't even work. We're throwing things together, but the idea is that a lot of the early stage concepts that we run into, these folks are super excited. They need help. They need some guidance, but they don't always have the cash that they need to pay consulting fees. Like even on the lowest of low ends, consulting, especially retaining a consultant, can be expensive, right? So that's something that, I started to realize we need to provide something for these folks that is easier to access, easier to digest, and that can almost serve as a sort of pre-qualifying step for something like a consulting engagement. And so AppThink is being built to do that by sort of hybridizing the best of online learning with some one-to-one coaching. And so basically what it looks like is the interface will look like a traditional online course, right? So you'll have a daily video to go through, some daily materials to work through, but then each day, it doesn't go consecutive day 1, day 2, day 4, day 5. There's actually a couple of days in between each of those, and we run Zoom lectures live. So we're limiting the cohort to a certain number of people. You go through the coursework, and then we get on a Zoom call live, and we actually construct a fictional company to walk through each one of these steps. So you have some practice. And then we're creating a community so that after these 5 days, which really takes about 2 weeks to get through, after these 5 days are done, you have lifetime access to a community where you can go and implement this stuff and come back and ask questions, and we'll jump in, and your cohort members will jump in and help you work through some of the problems as you're going through these validation steps. But it's geared specifically towards these people to say, I have an idea. I think I want to build an app. I think I want to build a website. I don't know where to start. How do I de-risk this? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I sent your free ebook to my friend. And I think I'll recommend that. So what's the cost of join? Is it something you can talk about now, or are you going to?
No, we don't even have the product ready yet. We're hoping by the end of February. We've targeted the end of February, but what we're thinking, we're kind of kicking around some ideas on that, but we're going to make it pretty affordable at first.
Yeah.
And that's because we want to get some learning out of it. Right. Yeah. So we're going to be jumping in and we actually had a meeting yesterday, my co-founder and I, and we were kind of going through the daily Zoom lectures and, how does this work? How does this work? And I stopped him and I said, we're just going to have to do this. Like, we just need to get some people on a Zoom call and go through it and see what kind of questions come out and what kind of hiccups there are. So, we talk about it like there's a discount for going first, right? So it'll be pretty affordable at first. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to sign my friend up right now on the pre. What's it called?
Get the free ebook. Get them on the list. Yeah, we'll blast that entire list when it's time to go. So, but this is a nights and weekends thing. We're both full time work. I'm doing full time with my consulting company, and he's the director of product management for a pretty busy company. So, we're hoping that by the end of February, we've got something that we can put in front of people. So.
Well, look, it's a great service, and I think about communities in New Zealand where there's just not a lot of awareness about software as a service. It's just not even a conversation, and
Mhm.
it's a fantastic skills builder and wealth building category.
Yeah. I agree.
And you know, I turned my eye back to software as a service last year
Mm.
because I realized that I was kind of ignoring software as a service because I had my eye on the shiny objects like all these different exponential technologies in the world and where they're all going, and
Yeah.
software as a service didn't seem that sexy. And now I just I'm so glad that I have gone back to it because it's I think it's the fastest way to it's a little bit like property
Mhm.
compared to kind of some weird financial instrument. I could say a stock and a share or a cryptocurrency, but
Yeah.
just some weird financial instrument like
Mhm.
exponential technologies like blockchain and even AR and just all
Mhm.
these things that are kind of like been the buzzword for the last 5 years that are getting
Yep.
more and more momentum. That's still a kind of a crapshoot at the casino.
100%.
Where software as a service is just like layer on layer on layer on top of the internet, and it's more like buying a section or a block of land in a house or
Yeah.
an investment flat or some. It's getting a stake, and I really think that it's um, probably massively undervalued. Like I know that in New Zealand, um, what people think their companies are worth and what investors are paying for the companies and where these companies are going and the quality and the standards of excellence and the expertise that's pouring back into the community from people who have done it before, it's off the charts, and I don't think
Yeah.
people can really see it. And so I really think that and I'm sure there's people in New Zealand doing the same, and if they're listening, I'd like to have a session with them as well,
Yeah.
because whole entire communities need to figure out. I'm just talking about I was with a lot of the Samoan community in my old hometown of Christchurch yesterday for this service. Like whole communities can benefit from taking this information that you're sharing and getting on board and going, well, I don't quite know where this is going. I don't even quite have the right idea at all.
Yeah.
But there's more than 3 times that in the last year that I've thought about a software product. I mean,
Yeah.
people have all sorts of like, Simon,
Yeah.
I got this idea for a product. You must have that all the time at a party or something. Well, you don't have
Mhm.
parties at the moment, but it's just like this. It's in the zeitgeist of like we're using, as you said, we're all using the phone. We all have these app ideas. This one's
Yep.
not quite right. What about that?
Mhm.
And what you're doing, which I love, is just helping bridge that
Yeah.
into not just a process and a structure, but like a journey. You're helping
Yeah.
people go on the journey. Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. And really not, I know we're running out of time here, but just to, one of the things that I would tell people if you're entrepreneurially minded, if you think you want to start a company, if you think you want to build a software product, one of the biggest challenges that I've seen and that I've run into personally is capture, right? It's capturing the ideas and fleshing them out to a stage where they're actually usable, right? And with AppThink, what we're hoping to do is give people the tools, the understanding, the lessons, and the tools that they need to take an idea up to the point where they have to make a decision about whether or not it's something they actually want to invest in. Because that space, there's a lot of liminal space there where it's like, I don't really know what to do. I've had an idea and I
Yeah.
know I'm not ready to build it, but how do I bridge that gap, like you said? And that's what we're hoping to do. It doesn't make sense to have, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 consulting engagements at that stage. There's just a
No.
lot of work that you can do yourself to get to that point where it's time to say, okay, I'm ready to make this happen. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, look, Trevor, thank you very much for all your, just, I think what you're building is fantastic. The fact that you're lowering the bar so that people can use something semi on demand, semi, virtual, and just good luck with everything, and love to have you back on the show once this is up and running, and you got some
Absolutely.
progress reports, including a testimonial from my friend. So thank
Absolutely.
you.
I love it. Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.